The great economist Thomas Sowell said, the first law of economics is scarcity. There's never enough of anything to satisfy all those who want it. And the first law of politics is to ignore the first law of economics. You know, every creature in the universe, could it be the birds in the trees or the fish in the seas, has to live with scarcity to maximize the use of limited resources. Every creature except politicians. They can simply pass on the scarcity to someone else in higher taxes, debt, or inflation. Speaking of inflation, today's 30-year high in inflation is the result of the cost of government driving up the cost of living. $500 billion of inflationary debt means more dollars bidding up the price of fewer goods. Inflationary taxes make it more expensive for businesses to make those goods. Why are taxes and deficits so high? Well, to satisfy the uncontrollable and insatiable spending appetites of government. When Trudeau took office, the federal government spent $8,000 for every man, woman, and child in Canada. Now that number is $11,000. In other words, the cost of government per person has gone up $3,000, and that's adjusted for inflation. That works out to $12,000 per family of four in extra costs of the federal government. Are you getting an extra $12,000 of benefit from this government? I didn't think so. And don't blame all the new spending on COVID. According to the parliamentary budget officer, about $200 billion of all new spending measures brought in the last 2 years had nothing to do with COVID. So why is government spending so uncontrollably? Well, why not? They don't pay for it, and they have no limit on how much they spend. They do not have to make the either-or scarcity decisions that you and other families have to make to meet a family budget. Well, that's about to change, because a Poilievre government will introduce the Pay-As-You-Go Act. The Pay-As-You-Go Act will cap government spending by requiring that every new dollar of spending measures be matched with a dollar of savings to pay for it. In other words, government will not simply be able to pile on new spending and just pass the buck over to taxpayers through inflation, debt, or tax hikes. Rather, it will have to look within its own budget to find savings from within. There will, of course, be exemptions for major national emergencies like wars, terrorist attacks, earthquakes, pandemics, etc. And existing budgetary increases for healthcare transfers and defense, well, they're already budgeted and won't be affected. But new spending measures, decisions to add new dollars above and beyond what is already accounted for, would have to be matched with savings. Well, you know, that just makes sense, and it is not just theoretical. In fact, the United States brought in this law in the 90s under Bill Clinton, and for the only time since I've been alive, the Americans were able to actually balance their budget and pay off $400 billion of debt. And as soon as the law lapsed, the Americans went back into deficit and haven't emerged with a balanced budget since, proving that if politicians have legal limits on their spending, they will be able to balance budgets and keep costs low. But when they have no limits, well, they will pass on more and more costs to the people. There are three major benefits to the Pay-As-You-Go Act. One, it will root out waste. Any minister looking to spend more on one thing will be forced by a law of discipline to go into his department and seek out waste and mismanagement that he can reallocate to his new proposal. Right now, there is no such incentive. He can just add more spending above and beyond what already exists. Two, it'll force higher performance because government will be living by the same law of scarcity that you live by. It will have to maximize the benefit of each dollar spent rather than just adding new dollars and making you pay for it. And three, more affordable government. When you keep the cost of government under control, you keep the cost of living under control. We can reduce inflation and taxes when we reduce government spending as a share of the size of the economy. In other words, we will have less waste, higher performing programs, and lower inflation and taxes on your back. Look, it's just common sense. You know, think of the Jones family. They have $2,000. They can spend it on a new porch or on a vacation, but they can't afford any more of the $2,000. So they have to pick between the two, or better yet, find a bargain on each. They might shop around to reduce the cost so that they can do both those things for the same $2,000. Wouldn't it be nice if government did exactly the same thing as the Jones family? That's what you would expect, and that's what you deserve, and that's what you will get when I bring in a hard cap on government spending with the pay-as-you-go act. It'll put you back in charge of your money, your life, in Canada, the freest nation on earth.